Their gates are no more than firewood now!
Stop moving, if you please! Look! The siege equipment!
Units can no longer fire!
Nothing leads to you, men!
Stand and fight! Die with honor, you dogs!
Easy, lad! I think we lost them, son! So, they have some honor then!
Nizam al-Malik was born in the year 408 AH in Nukan, one of the cities of Tis. His mother died when he was an infant, and she was from the family of Hamid al-Din al-Tusi, who most of them were ministers. His father was concerned with him, so he learned Arabic and memorized the noble Quran when he was 11 years old, and he became acquainted with jurisprudence according to the doctrine of Imam al-Shafi'i. At the beginning of his youth, he contacted the service of Ali bin Shazim, the governor of the city of Balkh, and worked as a clerk for him, and he went to David bin Mikhail, the Seljuk father of Sultan al-Barslan, so David appeared from him with advice and talent, so he handed him over to his son al-Barslan and said to him, he was taken by his father, and do not go against him with what he refers to. Nizam al-Mulk had two scholarly friends, Hassan al-Saba, founder of the assassin base, and Omar Khayyam, poet and philosopher. The three swore to help each other in the event that one of them succeeded in his life and assumed a high position. The first success was for Nizam al-Mulk, who held the high position of minister of the Seljuk Sultan. The king's regime did not forget his oath, which he cut with his companions, and accordingly it ordered the payment of a fixed salary to the poet Omar Khayyam, while he assigned Hassan bin Sabah a high position in the state. However, the unexpected happened. Hassan al-Sabah was able to compete with the king's regime in power, forcing the latter to expel him from power through a plot hatched by him. And then Ibn Sabah swore to take revenge on his friend. From here begins a cycle of conflict between them, ending with the assassination of Minister Nizam al-Malik in Nahawand. Take over the ministry. He assumed the ministry to the Seljuk Sultan Alp-Arslan, the second sultans of the Seljuk state, and from the first day of his ministry he adopted the policy of bringing the competent and righteous men together, and he participated with Alp-Arslan in his famous battle against the Romans, and the high esteem of Alp-Arslan was very high, and the messengers and informers tried to change his heart towards the king's system. But he did not listen to them, and when his death instructed his son to take over the king's regime as a minister after him. Indeed, he became the king's regime for his king, and he remained on his high competence and ability in managing the country. The power of the minister appeared, the king's regime and his influence was consecrated after the death of Alp-Arslan, and he stood next to his eldest son, Malak Shah, and the conflict was raging at the time between the members of the Seljuk house, but his king was the most favorable and strongest of them, in addition to the minister's support for the king's regime and his support for him, so he took over the sultanate and assigned the ministry as appointed to the king's order until conditions stabilize and security prevail throughout the country. Saladin crowns the march of reform and jihad against the Crusaders by restoring Jerusalem after 88 years of occupation. The new sultan was at the age of 20 when he took power, while his minister was 55, a seasoned politician, son-in-law with experiences and days, and the news of rulers and sultans, which made the new sultan glorify and respect him, address him with reverence, call him uncle, pass the reins of affairs to him, and put in him trust him, telling him, "You have referred all matters, big and small, to you, for you are the parent." This close relationship between the Sultan and his minister led to the prosperity of the state and its attainment of glory, as it became the largest power in the world at the time. The king's regime cared about scholars, ascetics and scientific schools and spent huge sums on them, so his opponents sought to inform the Sultan Malik Shah, and they said, the king's regime spends 300,000 dinars every year on the jurists and reciters, even if this money is spent on an army to raise its banner on the walls of Constantinople. Then the Sultan asked his minister to be questioned, and he replied, "Then you spend twice as much money on the fighting armies, even though I have strengthened and held them. His throw does not reach a mile, and his sword strikes only what is close to it, and I set up for you an army called the Night Army, which prayed if your armies fell asleep. So they extended their palms to God and sent their tears, and from their supplication arrows would reach the throne, nothing withholding them from God, for you and your armies and their watchdogs live, and their supplications are established and their blessings you will provide." So the Sultan cried and said in Turkish, "Shabashi, O Abba Shabashi," translating that into Arabic, "Have plenty of this army." The system of the king and the beginning of the generation of Saladin minister Nizam al-Mulk was considered one of the most influential figures during the days of Sultan Alp-Arslan. Historians say that Nizam al-Mulk is one of the most important figures in Islamic history. He accompanied the Sultan in most of his wars and conquests. This minister encouraged famous personalities in literature and science of his time, such as the poet Omar Khayyam, who was a brilliant astronomer. He also established the scientific academies in Baghdad, the most famous of which is the Nizamiya school in 1067 AD. Among the students of this school are Ahmad al-Din al-Asfahani and Baha al-Din Shaddad, who served Sultan Salah al-Din al-Ayyubi, al-Sadi, the Persian poet, author of Bustan al-Sadi, and the Shafi'i Sheikh Abu Ishaq al-Shirazi and Abdullah bin Tumar, founder of the monotheistic state in Africa, and Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, author of the book The Revival of Science's Religion. Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, the well-known reformer and pioneer of the era of religious reform, which paved the way for the generation of Salah al-Din al-Ayyubi, and the ambassador and poet Ali bin Abi Talib al-Balkhi, lectured in it. Nissim al-Mulk wrote a book on the arts of government known as Siyasatnama, The Tourney of Kings, in which he talked about the organization of government and the necessity of establishing justice, organizing state matters and deductions, organizing the administration and the army, and the history of the relationship between the central authority and the era of the Seljuks. Regular schools main article, regular schools. Main article, regular schools. The idea of establishing these schools came because of the spread of the Shiite sect in the east, especially Khorasan, Iraq and other regions of those countries, and the regime of the king was interested in spreading the Sunni sect and fighting the spread of the Shiite sect. And I believe that invading their country and taking Persia from the grip of the Abids was not sufficient for that. Therefore, the king's regime decided to start building a series of schools that teach the religion according to the teachings of the Sunni doctrine, and more especially the Shafi'i school due to the regime itself being a Shafi'i. So it began to establish the first of these schools in the city of Baghdad in 457 AH. A great crowd of Baghdad residents attended it when it opened, and Abu Ishaq al-Shirazi was assigned to teach it.